Oh, I was there, hated the day. The day was a miserable day. I mean, it was a worst royal engagement I ever did, a royal wedding I ever did. And I travelled the world with him, and I did really enjoy working with him. But, you know, now I really don't care if I ever see him again, because the way he's behaved towards the king and our queen and his brother and his sister-in-law is appalling.
Forget the fairy tale you saw on TV. Meghan Markle and Prince Harry's royal wedding wasn't the joyful celebration it appeared to be. Critics say it was a carefully staged spectacle built for cameras, headlines, and celebrity attention.
She delivered it like an actress delivered it, and Oprah responded going, wow.
The glossy carriages, soaring music, and glamorous guest shots looked flawless on screen. But behind the scenes, the mood was very different. According to royal photographer Arthur Edwards, the day was chaotic and deeply uncomfortable. Guests were packed tightly inside Windsor, trapped in heavy coats and formal gowns under intense heat. Many struggled just to stay composed. Senior royals, figures who had devoted decades of service to the crown, were pushed into back rows while Hollywood faces and Meghan's industry connections occupied the best seats, turning the ceremony into something closer to a red carpet event than a royal tradition. Even the press felt the tension.
All my life, you know, and then Oprah Winfrey had met them once. She was a guest. The Clooneys, the guests. I mean, never met them before, but they were the guests. And, you know, I thought to myself, this all showbiz. So he was angry, and I felt we were punished for that. In fact, I never got one picture in the paper published from that day.
Harry reportedly avoided cameras throughout the ceremony, ducking key moments and leaving photographers scrambling. Edwards later said he couldn't capture a single usable image, something he claimed had never happened at any royal wedding he'd covered. For seasoned professionals, it was unprecedented and frustrating. Some observers felt Meghan treated the moment less like a joining of families and more like the debut of a carefully crafted public image. Critics argue the focus wasn't unity or tradition, but presentation. What the world saw as romance, insiders described as branding. On television, everything looked perfect. Flags waved, choirs sang, celebrities smiled. Millions believed they were watching a modern royal love story unfold in real time.
And then when the baby was born, when Archie was born, that was another, in my view, a disaster, because I knew we was not going to get a picture of it. Everybody was hoping we would get pictures. It's one of the saddest things of all, Matt, of course, is that the children don't get to see their grandfather. That's really so awful, because they're not getting to meet their cousins and to know their cousins. Such a shame for them.
Inside the chapel, however, the atmosphere was reportedly suffocating rather than romantic. Guests sat for hours in oppressive heat as sweat soaked through designer clothing. Women clutched fans, makeup melted, and tempers wore thin. Edwards, who had covered royal events from Charles and Diana to William and Kate, allegedly described it as the worst engagement of his career. The problem wasn't the weather alone. Royal weddings have endured rain, wind, and heat before. What made this one stand out, critics say, was the lack of care. Comfort seemed secondary, and that detail spoke volumes. Only the optics mattered. The smiles broadcast around the globe sold a dream, while off-camera, exhaustion and frustration simmered. What was branded as a day of joy felt more like a boiling endurance test. The fairy tale worked for viewers at home, but for those trapped inside, it was reportedly unbearable. If the heat wasn't enough, the seating plan turned quiet humiliation into a talking point. Decades of royal service suddenly meant nothing. Distinguished relatives, military veterans, and senior royals who had carried the monarchy's weight for years were pushed aside and parked in back rows like afterthoughts. Meanwhile, Hollywood celebrities, many with barely any real connection to the couple, were placed front and center. This wasn't about family honoring its own. It was about which faces would look best when the cameras zoomed in. Image came first, respect came last.
Oh, I was there. I hated the day. The day was a miserable day. I mean, it was a worst royal engagement I ever did, a royal wedding I ever did. Harry was determined to keep the newspapers away from it as much as possible. Everything was done on long lenses. I mean, I tell you, had an 800mm lens photographing the guests arriving. The photographers they engaged for the job was 5 feet away. You know, it was just hopeless. And then the carriage shot, when they went past me in the carriage, they looked the other way. So for me, it was a disaster.
Arthur Edwards, a photographer who has captured history-defining royal moments, reportedly joked that he needed a GPS just to figure out where he'd been placed. His view was blocked, his work compromised. After decades of loyal service, being treated like background scenery hit hard. Around him, guests whispered in disbelief as complete strangers soaked up the spotlight. Some described the event as nothing more than a red carpet networking stunt. Windsor Castle didn't feel like Windsor anymore. It felt like a glossy Hollywood awards show wrapped in royal cloth. The message was loud and clear. Tradition and loyalty didn't matter. Status and star power did. Anyone hoping the reception would redeem the misery was met with another letdown. A royal wedding is supposed to mean abundance. Grand tables, flowing champagne, and banquets that make headlines. Instead, guests were served what many described as a glorified cocktail hour. Finger foods and tiny canapes replaced the lavish spreads seen at past royal occasions. Guests dressed in thousand-pound outfits were left nibbling on microscopic bites of avocado toast and a few macarons, barely enough to take the edge off. It felt cheap, not regal. Whispers spread fast. How could the so-called wedding of the decade fail to properly feed its guests? Some laughed it off. Others were quietly furious. Edwards himself allegedly called the portions pathetic, completely out of step with a monarchy built on scale and spectacle. The food became symbolic, minimal, polished, and hollow. All presentation, no substance. This wasn't an accident. It was deliberate minimalism, designed to look chic in glossy magazine spreads. In reality, it left people hungry and unimpressed. Guests reportedly walked away, craving a real meal and a real sense of occasion. For many, the heat, the seating snubs, and the pitiful snacks confirmed what they already suspected. This wasn't a royal wedding. It was a public relations show dressed up in crowns. And as if that wasn't enough, Prince Harry allegedly used the day to settle personal scores.
I have to say, though, you know, that first year of Meghan, working with her on the road, you know, we went all over the country. She was incredible. I mean, I thought she was a great asset to the family.
Instead of embracing the press as part of royal duty, critics say Prince Harry did the opposite. Where past monarchs understood cameras as part of the job, he reportedly glared at them. He dodged angles, shifted positions, and repeatedly avoided clear shots. For photographers on assignment, it wasn't just difficult, it was deliberate. For Arthur Edwards and other seasoned professionals, the day became a nightmare. They weren't covering a future king in a ceremonial role. They were dealing with someone who appeared openly hostile. At moments where tradition called for a composed smile or a formal pose, Harry turned away or blocked sightlines, making it nearly impossible to capture anything usable. Edwards, a veteran who photographed King Charles III, Diana, William, and Kate with ease, later admitted this was the first royal wedding where not a single respectable photograph emerged. That detail raised eyebrows across the press corps. Observers argue it wasn't an accident. They believe Harry was making a point, using the wedding to send a message to the British media he blamed for Meghan's harsh press coverage. Instead of rising above the tension, critics say he let resentment lead the moment. A day meant to symbolize unity ended up clouded by visible hostility. Royal weddings traditionally blend pageantry with centuries-old rituals that reinforce continuity. This ceremony felt different. According to guests and commentators, long-standing traditions were stripped back and replaced with moments designed to spark reaction. From a sermon delivered like a dramatic monologue to performances that leaned heavily American in tone, the message felt clear. Look at us, not the crown. Edwards reportedly noticed the shift immediately. The steady rhythm of monarchy was gone. In its place was something curated for global headlines and social media buzz. Rituals tied to loyalty and unity were minimized, dismissed as outdated, and swapped for spectacle meant to provoke conversation. For many guests, the symbolism stung. This wasn't Charles and Diana sealing royal destiny, or William and Kate balancing modernity with tradition. It felt like Harry and Meghan Markle drawing a firm line, signaling independence from family expectations.
When I think I've done some really lovely royal weddings. I did both King Charles's weddings. I did William's wedding. I did Andrew's wedding. I did Sophie and Edward. You know, I mean, they were lovely occasions. But that today, I couldn't get out of Windsor quick enough. I promise you that.
The worst royal wedding to cover.
Yeah, I felt so. I felt it wasn't just me. It was the whole of the British press. You know, they were in many ways badly treated. I think it was Harry was angry with us really because some of the things that had been said about Meghan, and quite rightly, some of the things that were said about Meghan during the engagement were pretty harsh.
What should have been a royal celebration came across as a declaration of separation. Once the confetti settled, the fairy tale cooled quickly. The couple didn't just step back from royal life, they put distance everywhere. Invitations to stay at royal estates were reportedly declined in favor of hotels and private security, reinforcing control and separation. Family gatherings faded. Relatives hoping to spend time with Archie and Lilibet were left watching milestones from afar. Edwards later described it as heartbreaking, an entire generation missing out on shared traditions and bonds that once defined the family. What made it harder for some to accept was the contradiction. Public messages focused on compassion and family, yet close relationships quietly slipped away. For critics, that gap between words and actions said more than any speech ever could. To critics, privacy wasn't about protection. It was a shield, a way to push the royals out while selling their story to the world. What was supposed to unite families did the opposite.
I knew they'd be seething. I knew the Queen would be seething. I knew that the Prince of Wales, Prince Charles would be seething. It would be so unfair. First pictures of Archie that was taken by the Press Association. I mean, showing her on my phone, and that was the first time she saw him. You know, so it was difficult times.
The wedding deepened fractures that were already there. Every cold shoulder, every refusal to engage, every visible snub shaved away any real chance of reconciliation. What started as a glamorous spectacle slid into estrangement, framed as independence but felt by many as betrayal. If the wedding was the performance, the interview with Oprah Winfrey was the encore, and it landed even harder. Meghan Markle and Prince Harry sat in front of cameras not to heal wounds, critics say, but to blow everything wide open. Accusations of racism and cruelty were dropped on the royal family in a one-sided story where no one else had a chance to respond. Arthur Edwards reportedly called it what he believed it was, a stunt, not a dialogue, not a truth-seeking moment. A carefully staged strike meant to keep the spotlight locked on them. The timing raised eyebrows, too. Just as public sympathy appeared to cool and attention risked drifting, a scandal big enough to dominate headlines for weeks suddenly appeared. Supporters tuned in expecting honesty. What they watched, critics argue, felt scripted and strategic. The goal wasn't reconciliation, it was relevance. Publicity, profit, and brand building drove the moment. The fallout was brutal. Families were torn further apart, trust collapsed, and centuries of royal restraint were dragged into daytime television. For the couple, observers say, the chaos worked. Coverage meant attention, and attention meant leverage. It wasn't confession, it was extraction.
I mean, obviously, when William was born and Harry was born and George and Charlotte and Louis, we got great pictures outside the hospital. I remember, and William and Catherine especially, they made such an effort to show the whole world their new baby.
A royal meltdown packaged as prestige TV. That's why some argue the true legacy of the wedding wasn't celebration or unity. It was the opening act of a long-running circus. Behind the glittering fairy tale were guests baking in the heat, loyal royals pushed aside for celebrity optics, laughable food, and photographers punished for doing their jobs. Instead of honoring tradition, critics say the platform was used as a launch pad for a global brand. Once the ceremony ended, the strategy kicked into high gear. Carefully staged interviews, media standoffs, growing distance from family. Every move looked calculated. Every choice chipped away at dignity. They didn't adapt to the monarchy, detractors argue. They used it, then burned the bridge on the way out. And that's the real kicker. This wedding wasn't the end of the chaos. It was the blueprint. The drama didn't slow down. It multiplied. Scandal became currency, and the world kept watching. And if you think this breakdown was harsh, wait until you see how Trevor Noah takes aim at Meghan Markle on live TV. Click it, because what he says caught a lot of people off guard.